Today, I'm going to explain a beautiful romantic comedy movie from 1998 titled, There's Something About Mary. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie begins with a high school boy named Ted, who's asking a girl named Reynolds to be his date for prom night. But she does not give him an actual reply to his proposal. Later he is with a bunch of his classmates while they notice Mary, the most beautiful girl in the school. Not only the boys but the girls too are in awe of her beauty. She is so beautiful and charming that no one can take their eyes off of her. As Mary passes, everyone is curious about who Mary will go to the prom with. On the other hand, we see a mentally disabled guy, Warren, who is asking everyone if they've seen his baseball. Some of the students try to make fun of him and suggest that he should say wiener instead of baseball. Warren ultimately gets beat up by a boy after he asked about his wiener to the boy's girlfriend. Ted is noticing all of this, and he immediately intervenes between the bully and Warren. All of a sudden Mary appears in the scene and tries to save her brother Warren. Everyone there is surprised to see that Warren is her brother. On their way back home, Ted and Warren play with each other along with Mary. Before entering her house, Mary asked Ted if he would like to go to the prom with her. Ted cannot believe his ears that Mary is asking him to be her prom date. He accepts her proposal immediately, and the two depart. Ted tells his friends about the encounter with Mary, and that he is her prom date. However, none of his friends are ready to believe that a guy like Ted could get a beautiful prom date like Mary. They bet with Ted for $1,000 that Mary won't be his prom date. In the next scene, Ted approaches Mary's house to take her to prom night. He is wearing an extravagant suit and is holding a gift for Mary. He knocks at the door, which is opened by Mary's father. He tries to make fun of Ted, telling him that Mary has already departed for the prom with someone else as her prom date. Just before the heartbroken Ted departs, Mary's mother intervenes in their conversation and tells him to get inside. She also tells her husband not to make fun of Ted. Soon Mary comes downstairs wearing a beautiful blue gown. She is looking extremely pretty in the dress. Ted presents his gift to her and later tries to give Warren a baseball. Warren, who's busy playing with the Rubik's Cube, does not pay attention when Ted calls him, but turns as soon as Ted says he has seen his baseball. Ted tries to give him a baseball as a gift, but instead gets beaten by Warren. It is Ted's fault that he tried to come near Warren's ears, who seems to be very obsessed with his ears and doesn't like anyone getting near them. While calming down Warren, Mary has her dress damaged. She then asks Ted to wait for some time, while she changes her dress. Meanwhile, Ted goes to the bathroom to take a piss. From inside the toilet, he notices a pair of pigeons having a lovely moment. Right then, he is seen by Mary and her mother, who are trying to change Mary's dress. They think that Ted is a pervert and is pleasuring himself while looking at Mary. Ted panics and tries to get out quickly from the toilet. However, his hot dog gets stuck in the zipper, and he screams in pain, which is heard by everyone outside. Later, we see all of Mary's family members standing outside the toilet, which is occupied by Ted. It has already been about half an hour that Ted is in this condition. Tired of waiting, Mary's father decides to enter the toilet to have a look. When he enters, he is surprised to see Ted's condition. He immediately calls Mary's mother inside to take a peek at the situation. She suggests that Ted put on some ointment. All of them start making fun of Ted and his foolishness. Soon he is taken to the hospital in an ambulance. This is how Ted's first date is ruined. The scene now fast forwards 13 years, to where Ted is explaining all of this to his therapist, who has arrived just when Ted is about to end his story. However, the therapist seems to be eating something and paying no attention to his words. Later, when Ted meets his best friend Dom, he suggests hiring a private detective to extract information about Mary. Ted agrees and visits a private investigator named Pat. The private investigator starts his mission right away, and is seen in Miami tracking down Mary. He finds Mary's location in a very short time, and gets to know that Mary is an orthopedic surgeon living with her friend and neighbor Magda. Pat has secretly fitted a hidden mic in Mary's dress, and can hear whatever she talks about. After following Mary for more than 2 days, Pat finds himself being attracted to Mary. He listens to Mary talking with her friends, and gets to know that she loves the country Nepal. She also mentions that she likes architecture, and one day may Mary be an architect. After that, Ted and Pat meet to discuss the progress of the investigation. Pat lies to Ted that Mary has been married to 3 guys and also has 4 children from them. Listening to this, Ted feels that Mary is way out of his reach. On the other hand, we see Pat quitting his job and giving full attention to Mary and trying to impress her. He then joins the golf club, and during his small talk with Mary, he mentions that he frequently visits Nepal and is an architect who likes to create new designs. Mary is impressed by the fact that Pat is an architect, and also loves Nepal. Soon the two starts dating and spending time with each other. One night Pat gets to meet with Mary's disabled friend Tucker. Tucker is a British architect who has to use crutches to walk because of his spine injury. After knowing that Pat is also an architect, he inquires about the latest designs in the university from where Pat completed his architectural degree. Pat seems to be confused and tries to turn the question around. He also gives awkward answers because he has no clue about a real architect. Later Tucker meets with Mary and tells her the truth about Pat. He tells her that Pat is a fraud and not an architect. He further adds that Pat is lying about everything and is making a fool out of her and he's a serial killer. Inside his car, a distraught Pat is listening to this conversation. When Tucker leaves Mary's house, Pat decides to follow him. After following him to his room, he gets to know that Tucker is also a fraud and is lying to Mary about his spine injury. He is also not an architect, but rather a pizza delivery boy. One night while Tucker is delivering the pizza, Pat confronts him and beats him up. Tucker then speaks out the truth that he also loves Mary and is acting as a disabled guy to get close to her. In the next scene, Ted gets to know through one of his friends that Mary is not married and that he has been fooled by the private detective Pat. He then decides to fly to Florida to meet Mary. On his way, he gives a lift to an unknown person who's carrying a red bat. The person is actually a mouse murderer who leaves the dead body inside Ted's car. Ted gets captured by some gay people when he gets out to take a piss. Soon he gets arrested by the police. Later he is rescued by his friend Dom, who bails him out of prison. Meanwhile, police also arrest the real culprit and Ted is free of any more trouble. The next day, Ted notices Mary and calls out to her. Mary is surprised to see Ted after 13 years, and mentions that he has become more handsome than before. Both of them seem to be fond of each other. They start getting close and go on dating and start falling in love. One day, Ted visits Mary's house to visit her neighbor, Magda. When he enters, he finds that Magda is high on drugs and is continuously vacuuming the furniture. Ted tries to help Mary and Magda get the dog out of the washroom, but instead, gets attacked by the doggy. During the chaos with the dog, it falls from the window. Mary and Magda are focusing on the dog, rather than the injured Ted lying on the floor. In the next scene, we see Ted shaking his hot dog inside the hotel washroom. He has to go on a date with Mary, but he is here doing the date in the washroom. Mary arrives at the door and knocks while Ted is searching for the liquid that he shoot out from his hot dog. He does not find where it went, and opens the door to greet Mary. Ted has his liquid on his ear, and Mary believes it to be hair gel and applies it to her hair. On their date, Mary's hair seems funny as she has applied the hair gel thing on it. The relationship between Mary and Ted seems to have worked out for both of them. Mary also feels that Ted is the right guy for her. She also tells Magda that Ted is a decent guy and she wants to marry him. Just when everything is going well, Mary receives an anonymous letter which mentions that Ted would hire a personal detective named Pat to keep an eye on Mary. Mary gets angry that Ted has tried to spy on her. Ted tries to explain to Mary that he did all of this to find her and find out how she was doing. However, Mary is in no mood to listen to Ted's explanation. She asks him to leave her place. Ted then arrives at Pat's location and is surprised to see Tucker healthy and able to walk without the help of crutches. On the other hand, Mary is confronted by Dom, who turns out to be her former boyfriend Woogie, who got weird on her back in high school. He confesses that he is the one who wrote the anonymous letter informing him about Ted. Dom then asked Mary to marry him, but she rejects his proposal immediately. Meanwhile, Tucker, Pat, and Ted also arrive at the location. Mary is now surrounded by her lovers who are all liars. Having found out that Tucker also lied about Mary's former interest in football player Brett Favre, Ted decides that Mary should be with Brett, as he's the only one who did not resort to deceit to win Mary. He calls Brett to the place, and when he arrives there, Mary hugs him tight. After reuniting Brett and Mary, Ted leaves tearfully. Looking at the condition of Ted, the musicians are also playing music and laughing at him. In the last scene, while Ted is getting away from Mary's house, he hears Mary shouting his name and running towards him. Mary then approaches him and tells him that she loves him, and not anyone else. She further adds that she also wants to marry him. Hearing this, Ted becomes happy, and the movie ends while the two are kissing each other passionately. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hit that like button if you did, subscribe if you're new. And at last, I'll say stay well, stay safe, thanks.